Hey everyone, this is Coach Mark Nolan, and welcome back to the Sports Parents University podcast. Today we're diving into year two of the 4-year high school roadmap, the sophomore year, or what I like to call the development year. So, look, if you listened to last week's podcast, this one is going to be really more difficult to think about, not being serious about. If freshman year is the foundation, the sophomore year is the framing, the wiring, the plumbing, and basically the load-bearing structure of the entire house. This is the year where athletes either build momentum or they quietly begin falling behind. And most parents don't see it happening until junior year, when it's almost too late. So let's break this down. Section 1 is going to be called the freshman to sophomore year transition. This is where we now expect more. Unlike the huge, shocking leap from middle school into high school, the sophomore transition is quieter, but far more important. And here's what happens behind the scenes. Coaches expect maturity. Responsibilities increase. You might even have a car, you might have a job. Competition gets real. Strength expectations rise. Social pressure kicks up. Academics get harder. Playing time does matter. And college timeliness begins. And here is a line parents need to hear. Sophomore year determines whether junior year becomes a launch pad or a rescue mission. So let's unpack it. In section 2, we're going to talk about what athletes experience as sophomores and take it from one who works with a lot of sophomores every year. Sophomore athletics suddenly realize freshman learning year grace is over. Their body is changing fast. They're expected to take initiatives. Varsity starts to become a realistic goal. Coaches watch them differently. Skill gaps begin to show. Habits are no longer new. They're either helping or hurting. This is the year where athletes think they're improving, but many actually stall. I call it the sophomore stall out. You know what they do? They repeat the same workouts, the same habits, the same level of effort, and expect junior year results. And that never happens. And you know what, parents? In section 3, this is what you're going to experience with your sophomore athlete. This is the year where you as parents begin to notice GPA trends, academic struggles, social distractions, increased attitude or fatigue, and real competition in sports. Other families are spending money on private coaching, club sports overlapping with school sports, recruiting chatter starting, and their athletes' weaknesses becoming more visible. Look, sophomore year is for the first time parents are starting to ask, do we need to take this more seriously? Yes, this is the year to take it seriously. And in section 4, I'm going to talk about the multi-sport myth. And I'm going to talk about my personal story and others. But this is really about more the educational but empathetic side for you as well. You've probably heard the National Federation of High School Sports talking about, 80% of athletes play multiple sports. And look, I'll be the first to tell you, I played 3 sports in high school: soccer, football, and I wrestled varsity my freshman and sophomore years while also holding a job to help me train for football and soccer like many of us did back in the day. But here's the truth. The world I grew up in as a youth is not the world your son or daughter is competing in today. And if you think it is, you are really crazy. When I was playing, we didn't have year-round club leagues. We didn't have 7v7 football. Didn't have AAU basketball. We didn't have travel baseball showcases every weekend of the year from one end of the country to the other. Mega sports complexes with billion-dollar taxpayer-financed stadiums $500 baseball bats, $400 new cleats, and $600 tennis rackets. Early recruiting windows didn't exist. NIL money, not a chance. The transfer portal never happened. Private coaching on every corner, not back then. Instagram comparison pressure? What the heck is that? $4,000 summer schedules? College camps every weekend? And lastly, no focus on can I do D1? Heck, the NCAA didn't even have the divisions in college set up until my senior year in high school in 1973. So look, the 80% statistic was built in a world that no longer exists. And that's why sophomore year is the first year where this question becomes very, very real. If you had to choose one sport to pour the most development into, which one would it be? You can still play multiple sports, absolutely. But by sophomore year, junior year, you must know which sport gets your priority development. Or you will fall behind the athletes who already know because that's what they are doing, like it or not. You can talk to your peers. This is not early specialization, it's strategic prioritization. And if you think this is bad, want to hear what happens in college a sophomore year that your college coaches and the NCAA won't tell you about? Look, overall, 30% of current college athletes will quit their sport before they even graduate from college. And over 15% of those college athletes who are on full rides walk away from their sport careers and thus increasing their educational costs. But I'll address this later on in my junior episode next week. So look, I want to talk about a little bit of a conflict. This is called the soccer to football conflict. And this is for more kickers and punters, basically. Let me talk specifically to you guys and gals out there for a moment. This is one of the biggest sophomore traps I see every year. The soccer to football dual athlete who plays club soccer, plays high school soccer, practices all winter, does indoor, goes travel soccer, guest plays, travels all spring, and completely puts away their football bag for 3 to up to 5 months. I literally had this conversation last season, and just about every postseason when football ends and soccer in the winter and spring starts. And again, I'm not knocking soccer. I hear this, Coach, I'm ready to start kicking again. But they weren't ready, and here's why. They have tight hip flexors. They have weak glutes. They have quad dominance. They have rusty mechanics. They lost their swing patterns. They have no plant foot stability. They have no flexibility maintenance. They have no mobility work. They have no strength balance. The fast twitch muscle we worked on all summer and spring has turned to a slow twitch muscle, which is more endurance training due to soccer training versus football training. Soccer's not kicking. That's the reason why the ball is round. Football is not soccer. This is the reason why the football is a proloid spheroid ball. And both can destroy each other if you don't manage the workload. That's why sophomore year is the critical window to maintain a 10 to 20 minutes of workouts of kicking in specific work each week, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, if you're playing a second sport. Because you know what? It keeps the hips open. It maintains proper swing mechanics. You have to use things like kick strong and yoga mobility. You got to protect your growth plates. You got to avoid the quad overload. You got to keep the posterior chain strong and balanced. If you don't, hip injuries are going to happen. Quad strains, knee issues, and accuracy problems show up quickly. Look, it's a simple matter of time and training. For instance, let's say you're playing on this high school soccer or a club soccer team, and you're practicing and then playing games 1 to 2 times a week. And let's be conservative. Let's say you practice 4 times a week, 3 hours a night. That's 12 hours a week. And if you're doing club as well, that's even more time away from kicking. your footballs. And so, what happens after that? Let's say that you don't even pick up a football until April when the soccer season ends. Well, guess what? That's 48 hours a month times 4 months. That nearly 200 hours you've gone away from memory muscle we built in football season. And then all of a sudden, you come out in April and think, oh, I'll just kick the dust off where we were from just last season. Well, guess what? Your memory muscle does not work that way. I could get into the weeds on what we call FMS, functional movement screening, but it would probably go in 1 year and out the other. But I did write a whole chapter about this in my book, but here's just a snippet of what we call FMS. FMS stands for Functional Movement Screening. And sophomore year is the perfect window for athletes to get their first functional movement screen. And you know why? Because the sophomore body is changing faster than any other time in high school. And what does FMS do? Well, it identifies a couple of things. It identifies hip mobility issues. It identifies tight quads and hip flexors and ankle instability and core weaknesses and left-right asymmetry and rotational imbalances. Of course, there's risk patterns it brings up with and injury red flags. This single tool can prevent groin pulls, hip flexor strains, hamstring issues, lower back pain, plant foot issues, and even overuse injuries. A sophomore athlete who gets FMS is ahead of 90% of their competition. That's all I'll just say. That is pretty quick. And if you want more information on FMS, feel free to give me a call at 678-200-7540 or my email at mnolan@thekickerzone.com. Lastly, we're going to talk about academics. The GPA trend locks in. Here's what families don't realize. Sophomore year is the GPA inflection point. Freshman year gave us the starting numbers, but sophomore year shows us the trend. Are grades rising? Are they falling? Are they flat? Are they becoming an issue? Are patterns being formed? Is rigor increasing or decreasing? Because this is the year to build academic scaffolding if we're talking about the foundation. And here's some things we can introduce. Khan Academy for math gaps, weekly study blocks, targeted tutoring, essay writing support, organization and planning tools. And parents, this is the year to correct academic weakness, not the junior year. And guess what happens when you get to college and play sports? Do you think you'll just be hanging out at the frat house thinking this is just like Animal House and don't have to study? Man, if you think that, you really don't know what college is all about. But here in Section 8, we're going to talk about the athletic development, which is the year of growth. Because this is the year the athlete's body finally becomes transforming. But it only transforms if they train correctly. They avoid ego lifting, especially in the weight room, and you know what I'm talking about. They maintain flexibility. They fix their mechanics. They build real strength. They focus on recovery. They sleep. They eat right. They follow structure. Because strength matters, but form matters more. Mechanics matter, but consistency matters the most. This is where Kick Strong Yoga becomes a massive advantage. It gives you some great hip mobility, core stability. It gives you flexibility. It gives you balance. It helps you with injury prevention. Because sophomore athletes who lock this in become varsity ready by junior year. Next section we're going to talk about is about the film. Because film does begin to matter. for the first time. Sophomore film is not a recruiting film, but it is an evaluation film. This is the year to build the first real highlight. Keep it short. Keep it high quality. Include only the best clips. No slow motion, no hype edits, no funky music going inside and out. And understand how coaches watch film. They evaluate the mechanics. They compare year 1 to year 2 improvements. They want to see how you're growing. They want to see sophomores must learn how to study film like a coach, not like a fan, because it's not about the followers in this area. And this is where we're going to talk about communication and leadership in this section. It starts to emerge. Sophomores must begin to start speaking, not texting, to coaches. Start asking questions, taking feedback, initiating communication, leading from the middle, and demonstrating maturity. And yes, advocating for themselves, because this prepares them for junior year and for junior year recruiting calls. Next section, we're going to talk a little bit about how exposure really begins, but strategically. See, sophomore year is the first year where exposure matters, but only the right exposure. Not these super duper crazy mega camps. Ranking camps are good, but don't get focused on them too much. Don't get focused on the hype camps or the showcase chaos. The key now is small development camps. Position-specific coaching, private coaching that you have. Not from your high school coach that never kicked in a game or high school or anything. Seek out some private instruction. Learning from experienced coaches. Evaluating where they stand. Identifying some competitive gaps. Because this is where the athlete learns the truth. The truth about who they really are as competitors. And parents, the parent role here is really, I'm asking you to become like a manager and a mentor. Because this is also your transition year too. Sophomore year is where you begin to step back and guide, not micromanage. Your role, support the academic independence, support the athletic development, encourage responsibility, teach time management, promote consistency, help with their decisions. And you know what? You got to avoid comparing. Please, that's a big one. Stop comparing. Avoid panicking. It's only sophomore year. And avoid over-coaching, if that's even possible. Avoid keeping up with the other families. This year builds maturity for you and your athlete. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sons and daughters, the closing message I have for you is sophomore year is the year of decision, the year of development, the year of direction. It's the year that determines who you are becoming, how hard you're going to work, what habits are you going to build, and bad habits you're going to get rid of. What weaknesses are you going to fix? What sport becomes your priority? How prepared you're going to be for the junior year? And how early you're going to stand out. How confident you're going to start to feel. And whether junior year becomes a launch pad for your success or a rescue mission. So think about that. You've got to build the sophomore year intentionally, and junior year becomes a gift. Ignore it, and junior year becomes a scramble. So look, this year matters. Choose to step forward now. Make sure you get out there, get your grades squared away, get your high school film squared away, get everything else done, relax, and enjoy yourself. And until next week when we do junior year, this is Coach Nolan signing off for right now. Take care.